Well, today marks the 25th anniversary of the final hearings into one of the biggest scandals to rock American politics. It's known as the Iran-Contra scandal, but strangely, it seems most Americans forgot it ever happened. It went down during the Reagan administration and involves the U.S. selling weapons to Iran and funneling money to rebels in Nicaragua. RT's Manuel Rapalo takes us through a timeline of the scandal.
Remember that time the United States sold weapons to the Iranian government in a weapons exchange for hostages deal in spite of an embargo against selling arms to Iran? I'm talking about the Iran-Contra scandal. This scandal resulted in the single largest short-term drop in approval ratings for any U.S. president in American history. So here's what happened. We know from declassified documents and what became known as the Reagan Doctrine that the Contras, who were in the early 1980s battling the Cuban-backed Sandinistas in Nicaragua, were, as President Reagan once put it, the moral equivalent of our founding fathers. Under the Reagan Doctrine, the CIA trained and assisted the Contras and other anti-communist groups across the globe. This was a challenge for the Reagan administration, however, because the Democrat-controlled Congress at the time opposed any U.S. government involvement in Nicaragua. Still, Reagan insisted that no efforts should be spared in aiding the Contras. The events that led to the words Iran and Contra even being used in the same sentence are the result of a complicated set of super-secret operations that would alter the public's perception of President Reagan dramatically. It was 1985, Iran and Iraq were at war, when Iran secretly requested an arms deal from the United States. National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane convinced Reagan that the deal was a good idea, despite an existing embargo against selling arms to Iran. At the time, Reagan had also grown frustrated over a stalled hostage situation involving 7 Americans being held by Iranian terrorists in Lebanon. The deal takes place anyway, violating the embargo and, consequently, striking a deal with terrorists, breaking Reagan's campaign promise never to do so. By the time the public learned that the transaction took place, more than 1,500 missiles had already been shipped to Iran. Reagan addressed the media, denying that the sale of weapons had been a weapons for hostages exchange, and later simply claiming that didn't have any information available to him at the time. Speculation about the involvement of Reagan, then Vice President George Bush, and the administration at large was everywhere. Take a look at the CBS interview from 1988. Then Vice President George Bush was asked about his involvement.
How can you reconcile that you were there, Mr. Neer underscored 3 separate occasions that it was an arms for hostages swap and told you were dealing with the most radical elements in Iran. You were dealing straight away with the Ayatollah Khomeini.
I was told what they were doing and not what we were doing, and that's the big difference. And Dan, I expressed my concerns and reservations about that. That has been testified to under oath by Mr. Poindexter.
That's not the end of the story, though. During the arms for hostages deal investigation, it was found that only $12 million of the $30 million that the Iranians reportedly paid for was accounted for. The discrepancy resulted from a diversion of funds aimed at funding the Contras in Nicaragua. Enter Oliver North of the National Security Council, and National Security Advisor Admiral John Poindexter, who had full knowledge of the operation, both assuming they had Reagan's support. So did the president know the activities were illegal? And if not, how could something of this scale occur without his knowledge? By 1992, George Bush is president, everyone gets pardoned, and history is left to repeat itself. We see examples of this today in the forms of emboldened claims of power by U.S. presidents when it comes to foreign policy, or the justification for, say, warrantless wiretapping, or in the events leading to the Iraq War. Manny Rapalo, RT, Washington.